Hey everyone, welcome back to yet again another free support Friday with none other than your host, Future here at jitcadcam. I see you guys starting to pour in here, and it has been quite the 2 weeks in a row where we've had nothing but internet problems. But take your bets now in chat. Do you guys think we're going to have internet problems today or not? I do know, for all of you that enjoy this actual Friday session, we have our internet provider coming out Tuesday next week, there is some problems on their end that they've discovered as well. So we'll give this a few minutes as you guys start to get in here. I see the numbers start to climb. Obviously, it's Friday. It's probably lunchtime for most of you guys. It's choppy now. Is it choppy? Oh, man. Travis, you always make it ridiculous on me. It should actually be pretty good. I'm noticing I'm not getting any frame drops on my side. Is the audio choppy? Looks like I'm a little loud in my microphone. Anything. Let's get that turned down just a hair here. All right. Is that any better? Also realizing that this audio knob on my microphone does like nothing. The audio, oh, it's probably clipping me. Let me get it turned down. There we go. Is that any better for you? Hey, Jeff, what's going on, buddy? As you guys know, every week we do kick this off. Thank you for all of you that have been buying me beers throughout the week. If you guys are here, this week we're going with the old Rain energy drink, nonetheless. That's better. Yeah, I think it was clipping me. I was getting into the red a little bit. Awesome. Seeing people come in here more and more. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I was on site training all this week. I have a couple of topics for you, but at any time, you guys know the deal. Feel free to chime in and ask any questions you may have, any curiosities, anything special you want to see. But I'm going to go ahead and get my screen shared and let's start this off. All right, we got our screen share going. Audio's still good. Internet hasn't given out completely yet, so I think we're good to go. So I think a lot of people, I don't know if the theme has just been 3D toolpaths lately, but I've gotten a lot of questions about things like boundaries, when to do what, all inside of Fusion. So for this, right off the start, I'm going to show you guys, there is an amazing example here called 3D milling containing toolpaths inside the default library. Now, it's great to go through and review the different types that we have, right? So keep in mind, this is a little bit of an older file, and I'm going to have to save this. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this in a little better place. Where are we at? And we are in April now. Man, this year is flying by. How do you guys feel? So as you can see, this has a lot of different examples inside the software. However, I like this model because it does show a lot of people the power of Fusion and what it will and will not recognize when it comes to toolpaths, right? So as you can see in our very first setup, they've actually auto-created a few toolpaths for you. Now, I always tell people the process at which you want to use Fusion is actually pretty easy. Start with the basics, and of course, only add to stuff at the top moving down. You never want to jump down to the bottom and start selecting stuff, right? And then move right as you can. So like a good example of some containment boundary stuff is this is all being driven off a chain selection, which just so happens to be the edge up and around this profile. So again, at the simple level, we always like to say, get the blue lines where you want them, right? As you can see, that was a good example on how to get stuff down inside of that part to be able to rough it out. Now, I did get some other questions that were pretty interesting, and this is probably going to paint a lot of you a little better picture here. But in the event we now have the blue lines more or less where we want them, is if we scroll down, and this is where I really like the idea of adding things after the fact, right? So one thing I think a lot of people don't realize is we can add machine surfaces and we could either avoid them or we could stay away from them. Now, we'll see this a little better on a 3D toolpath versus a 2D toolpath. Let's see what we got. We got a lovely scallop toolpath in here. So if on that scallop toolpath, let's duplicate it. To do this 3 different ways. We have our original, and now I'm modifying a second version. So what we're going to do is we're going to say we want to avoid just these handful of surfaces, right? As you can see, I'm going through and selecting those surfaces, and we're going to see what kind of toolpath we can get. And just like that, by just doing an avoid surface, it's automatically removing where that toolpath is going to go, right? But one big thing about that at the end of the day is the fact that we have now scaled that toolpath down to not touch the surface. But something like contact point boundary is still working with the fact that the edge of the tool needs to get all the way down this fillet, right? Now, another way to look at this, and this is, again, this is the way I like to think, is if I go in and I add machine surfaces, for example, and let's say I want to stay away from these two walls a certain distance, right? So I'm going to go in and I'm going to plug in 20 radial. And what you're going to see when it comes to machining those areas, we will actually keep the tool further away from that wall. And now a good comparison of this is I highlight both these tool paths. It may be tricky for some of you to see, but the avoid surface touching or the only machine certain surfaces, again, I personally don't believe by default you should just go in and pick a bunch of surfaces and say machine specific this, right? We like to narrow down the boundary first and foremost. And then from narrowing down that boundary, you can go in and very specific areas express only do this, only do that. Now, another thing I think a few people miss here is if you're somebody that's actually going to do stock to leave. So again, I'm going to go over to stock to leave here real quick, and let's just throw on 10. And then we're going to go back and we're going to look at the geometry. Now, if you look at model here down on the bottom right, I guess is my head in the way? Get out of the way here. Is model on the bottom right is showing you there's already radial stock to leave 10. Remember, we've added that in. And then from that, we've added either an additional group to stay away from. So this is really valuable if you wanted. You don't need stock to leave anymore. We could actually use model, or we could use group as well to be able to achieve additional stock to leave in a lot of different areas. So again, as if we turn those two toolpaths on, what you'll still see, we have 10 difference between these two toolpaths. But over here on that wall, we're actually achieving almost 30, right? So again, we have that 10 plus the additional 20 that we notified. So as you guys can see, when you get into that containment, it really is much better to start at the top and work your way down, right? So if you're somebody that's doing mold making, again, perfect example here. Let's say I'm actually going to turn stock to leave off here. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, you know what, our surface group is going to be based off a different set of surfaces, right? I would like to stay away from my internal fillets by an extra amount. So again, I'm going to utilize surface selection, and we're going to stay away from them by 20 in both directions. So as I'm hearing Travis is pointing out, something you found useful as well is to offset a surface and don't offset it when you could trim that surface. Using cut, I've been used with working castings. Yes, so castings are another good example that you would want to change your workflow. You almost want two models with castings that don't know. But again, as you guys can see, is when we do that additional avoid, stay away from the walls versus staying away from the other areas, we may still want to pre-finish. Or if you have a larger radius tool that's getting down in those corners, again, causing those surface defects. Adding the surfaces is very valuable after the fact of getting the toolpath to where we want it on this patient. So again, another really good and powerful one that a lot of people I think miss out on is when we start to talk about the ability to have one, by default, we have stock already in place on this part. But if it was a casting, here's where your initial roughing in this case is looking at the entire part profile, right? And then going back a second time, we may use a different toolpath. But if we're using a casting and we have two models, one model could be the stock itself, right? So if I go in and we say, you know, from solid stock, and what I'm going to do is not select everything, of course. What I'm looking for is actually just the model. If you guys all give me a second here, this is probably the best part about this is where I got to dig down and try to figure out where that stock model is. I did not draw this part for those of you. So as you can see, we now have our stock is basically a different profile or a different working model. And if I regenerate my toolpaths with rest machining, you're going to notice it only machines the difference between those two models, right? My stock model and my part model. So Travis, let me know if you've ever thought about that with the models and how well that can help you. I do know a traditional way like Travis is talking that if you wanted to stay away from something possibly, you could always go back to a surface and we could create an offset surface. And then you could offset that surface to be able to use and drive for a machining surface, right? So as you can see, we've now created a skin to. So if I go back to manufacture, again, if I tell the software, you know what, this is an additional model for machine case, I'm just going to use that skin. And then what we're going to see, you should see no tool paths going anywhere near that surface, right? So again, is now it's thinking based on the Z height and the X and Y that it can't get close to that surface placed there inside the part. So again, I see a lot more of you guys coming in here. If you guys have any questions at any time, feel free to throw them in chat. I did already start off the old energy drink for the day, and compliments to my wife. We have a delicious tea this. And no, there's no moonshine in the smoothie. We just like mason jars around my house because of all the candy barring, right? So again, as you guys can see, working through more and more. Now, something that I did notice a lot of you haven't done yet, and I highly recommend, is I would turn on my synchronizations down here. The reason why I like my synchronizations personally turned on is when I'm jumping from setup to setup. What you guys will notice is it's toggling on and toggling off all of my bodies that are associated with that. Now, this gets better, of course, when you start to think about jigs and fixtures, especially in a multi-axis environment. So here's my fixture now. I'm going to add that in with everything else. And now you can see the fixture even will turn on and turn off when jumping from part or setup to setup. So again, if you're going to run something in a palette, it's very important to define those things, but it's also extremely important when we start to look at some of these other parts, right? So again, down here, here's another good example of using model in addition to. So by default, we're roughing out this part. Now, some of you are probably noticing we're not going down inside these holes, right? And the reason why we're not going down inside those holes at all is because in the geometry tab, somebody has added in the patches for manufacturing. And again, those patches are hanging out over here on the left. So there's one patch, there's two patch, right? Now, why they're selecting three bodies, I don't know, which we should probably question that. But as you can see, using patches to patch over your hole works really, really well. Now, I've always been asked, do I patch something? Do I not patch something? What's the better workflow? But I don't really think there is, right? So when doing a 3D toolpath, you can notice we're dipping down inside those areas. Now, again, they're now doing a 3D toolpath specifically where the patch is. And again, those are all based off the ability to select the model specifically without the original setup model, right? So again, in my opinion, they are defining a certain area without needing the original setup model. This is not a very good way to work inside the software because we could have, of course, that could have been its own setup. Why are we machining a surface by itself? Doesn't quite make sense, but from an example standpoint, is if I was to check include model surface right off the rip, as you guys can see, we're machining that whole surface, right? Now, another way you could have did that is inside of the software. We're going to go ahead and shift gears here. Let's go ahead and grab a few more tool paths. So as you can see here, we're machining everywhere but where the patches are. Again, this is one of those things that depending on what you're doing in your end goal in the software, if we had model turned on and those two surfaces, but I wanted to contain this toolpath different, selection would be your best friend. Now, how you could see that is, again, is if I roll back up here, we're dipping into these holes, right? I go to a selection boundary, and I could say stay between those boundaries, right? So you guys are seeing, I quickly select those couple of things. I'm going to hit OK, and now we're avoiding those holes again, right? So there's a lot of different ways to do this. There is advantages and disadvantages, right? So right now we are also tool center. let's say I add an additional, I don't know the size of my tool, but let's say we go an additional 50 offset. Again, for blending purposes, we may not want that edge to start rolling over, but we're dipping down inside of that area. So again, this is where I really, really do believe the concept of starting from the top and adding to it as you go works really well, right? So again, as if I had surface patch models here, I can pull those surface patch models real quick. And now you'll see we are extending over that surface. And with extending it, we're not actually dropping down inside the hole and causing any issues, right? So again, a great way to change up your workflow and start to work with these boundaries. Oh man, it's been a rough week. How about you guys out there? Flew to Connecticut a week ago, flew back to Pittsburgh earlier this week. Still trying to recover. So again, your boundaries, as you work down that list, it becomes more and more valuable, right? Let's say, for example, I don't have model here at all, right? Now, I could go in, as you guys have seen, we could say avoid and avoid these walls here. Now, a lot of people don't realize we're still dipping inside of there, even with avoid set up. Again, this is why I cannot stress the idea of adding in addition to, because when we're dipping in there, the tool is yet to make contact on that surface, right? So that contact point boundary is just being trimmed back to where it never touches the wall on that avoid. So again, you guys can take it for what it's worth. We could do a lot more here. Moving a little further on, as some of you may guess, we want to extend those surfaces out. Again, this is like Travis pointed out earlier, is if I came back to my model, I'm going to go ahead and throw this in the right area so we can pick it quickly. But I could go through and I could actually do a surface offset. Now I'm going to offset that entire top surface, leaving it at 0. And then I may do something like an extend, right? So again, I could go through and extend all edges of this and create a bigger plane to work on. And with that plane to work on, that will be added as a machining boundary. And seems a little slow in chat this week. Are you guys running machines? Is that what's going on? So again, as you guys are seeing, we're waterfalling past the edge of our part. We may not want that. We could add that model in addition to. And now I have that model to my advantage. Remember, I've already added boundaries up above. So maybe we say silhouette here. And as you can see, we're now going all the way to the edge of that surface. That surface is considered part of the model. And we're waterfalling past the edge of the part. Running 2 machines. Travis, what you got smart machines, right? Both of them? So again, we could fix that based on selection. I'm gonna go ahead and say selection boundary. Now, here's one that I think a lot of people miss. The new boundary selection tool, in my opinion, the more I use it, the more I love it, right? So as I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use face contour this time, which allows me to pick multiple faces in one shot and auto project that boundary for manufacturing. So again, let's go ahead and drop off our extension here. We don't need that. And as you can see, now we're extending straight out using surfaces. Gabriel, I see you out there. How's it going, buddy? The American people, there are people in respect. So Travis has got all 6 machines. US V2 is nice. Hey, Elijah made it once again. What's up, buddy? So as you guys can see, again, just going through these tool paths more and more, things like your selected boundaries, adding in additional models. As you notice, I never actually get down here to the bottom where I need to add surfaces. So it's kind of a last and final resort, right? So again, I could add these patches in, and now we're going to machine that entire area. We are waterfalling, and that is partially because of your selection process. Let's go back. We're going to add into that model. Where was it here? We did stick everything all into one extrude cut. So back again, because I'm getting click happy apparently. And we need that surface that we created and our 2 patches. Now, this leads me up to a really, really good point where, as some of you guys may or may not know, the ability to use things that involve components over bodies. And I'll show you an example because I see username, it always cracks me up. I'm going to call you user May out there, right? Us Ren May. Cutting some plastic parts and they are nested. Is there a way to rough with horizontal and contour path? Do you want to rough with horizontal? Is there a chance you could send me a screenshot real quick and I could take a look? So, good example here again is we're looking at this part. Something that has happened here is one, that surface is lingering out there underneath the top level component. This is a big no-no, as a lot of you that have ever been trained by me. But as you can see, this component and this body, or I should say this surface and this body, lay underneath the top level component. And then you have 2 additional components all in one file. So any size example would be great. So looks like we are looking for simple thread mill calculation. M18 by 1 thread. So it looks like entering the crest. Okay. Can I program a KUKA robot in Fusion? So in some robots, Gabriel, you actually can at the end of the day. So overall, I have to put this out. Most robots use what's called a tool point. For a lot of you, that's called 68.2. Now, you're not going to have the freedom necessarily to control the joints of the robot from Fusion. And there is a couple of really good plugins that allow you to put Fusion code in there and then utilize that to manipulate it. So it's been a while since I've had to look at that. I do have a lot of customers, Gabriel, that they prefer Power Mill Robot. It's a much better solution for your use case. And you're more than welcome to shoot me an email at the info email address down below, and we can dive into that more. So, all right. So Elijah's question is about the crest. And I remember this from last week and getting it to fit perfect. So when you're dealing with something that involves, in my opinion, this is, everybody does it different, is his thread profile. Let's just say, for example, we're dealing with a 60-degree thread. I'm going to go ahead and set that to 60. And then what is happening in the world of Fusion, because we cannot, from a tool library standpoint, create a thread mill. I'm going to show this to you here. Give me a sec. So we have our thread mill tool. I feel like my brain is just not in it today. Like that every week on Friday. Thread mill, thread mill, thread mill. Apps. I not see it? There we go. So the cutter inside of Fusion, the biggest problem is that at the very tip of the tool, it's always going to be a square profile, right? So as you can see, no matter what I define here, there is no profile, as in, is the tip of the profile round, right? So something I like to do, and this might just be me, you guys can tell me, of course, is I like to draw what I'm going for, right? So if I know the tip radius in this case is, let's say, 10 thou. We got a tiny little circle way down in here, but I can actually do that math automatically now. So as I've set this up, I can be prepared to calculate whatever it is that I need. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a horizontal line in here for reference, and then we're going to go ahead and coincidence this. But from whatever the diameter of my tool is, I can now do the math, get the dimension that I need, right? So again, is what I'm really looking for is the distance from here to point times 2 to compensate depending on your threading system. Travis, you hate the way you got to do MPT threads, huh? Is it the same scenario as you guys are seeing here? Again, what I like to do, this might just be me. There is a lot of good calculations out there. But as you can see, I can now control everything if I back way out and get this shrunk down. Now that we have that, I can do the calculation to determine from the diameter of the tool or the radius of the tool. Again, if you guys didn't know, you can change stuff to center line instead. So if I went ahead and said diameter is whatever, let's say it's 125. And then from there, what is the distance from here to here? Would give me that additional offset, right? Awesome to see Tim out there. Tim, you made it. Great to see you. So again, you have your tool diameter, right? And then in this case, we're going to have an additional 5 thou times 2 diameter-wise offset, right? So depending on how you plan to do everything inside of Fusion, but if we open that profile up by blank amount, that will fix our thread milling situation, right? So again, we do have a lovely little part here that's going to work for this. So if I do my 2D thread, again, picking my inside profile, as you guys may or may not know, you have your thread pitch, of course, and then you have your pitch diameter offset. And this is where we would have to plug that in, right? Major diameter, minor diameter, and then add an additional 10 thou or whatever that dimension was that you calculated there. So this would get you very, very close. Start with, I do recommend to most people, no matter what you do in thread milling, it always seems that the first time you cut threads, it's never the correct fit anyways. So always shoot for the low side if you're internal or the high side if you're external. All right, Bogdan, you sent a file to support. Create a finishing toolpath like the one in the third setup. All right, but need to start in the middle of the part, step over outwards. So give me a sec here real quick. Let's get that pulled up. Jump over to my other side. Oh. If any of you guys are asking questions in chat, give me a moment. I'm going to jump back over. I see Travis recognized Tim from Facebook. Or not Facebook, but LinkedIn. Oh, YouTube. There we go. There we go. Let's get that uploaded. And there we go. Get a good old-fashioned OBS pulled back up so I can see you guys. Tyler, what's going on? Do I ever do these for FeatureCAM? Currently, we don't, but I will tell you this. If it is something that you would like to see based on FeatureCAM, go ahead and shoot us an email with the info at email address down below so that I can convince the guy making our FeatureCAM content that he needs to do the same thing, right? So as you can see, we're going to go ahead and get this part pulled up. And as you guys can see, I would like to start at the middle from what I'm understanding here. Let me get back up to the part, Bogdan. Third one in setup one, you want to start in the middle of the part and step over. Okay, so we're going to do, right now, currently you're doing a parallel toolpath, which would restrict you to just basically from a start to a finish. Now, may get lucky on a profile like this because there is the option to say up milling versus down milling, or we could say only up milling. Now, I don't know how well this is going to start in the middle and work outwards. Again, it did not. So this might be one of those things that I might have to do a little magic on my end. Let's get back to both here and actually get this set up so that we can work in one direction. Now, simple ordering sometimes will help as well. But as you can see, it's not doing much here, right? So again, we want to start at the lowest point and assume that we're going to work our way outwards as we work up those profiles, right? Sorry about that. So there we go. Again, we have a parallel toolpath. There is some other options as well that might work. Blend could be an option that would work. Again, I would base this off the different toolpaths that we have, of course. So we could go into blend. I'm not seeing anything that's saying inside to outside. But if we take a look at picking those profiles, again, we have our drive surfaces here. Go ahead and exit that. Did you apply appearances to this. I just want to. Looks like you do. Okay, cool. So let's go in. Again, we're going to go ahead and switch out to a blend strategy. I'm going to add in my drive surfaces. Also going to add in my drive curves, which I feel like I always put the wrong way. Let's go ahead and see what we get real quick this way. You guys going crazy in chat. Give me a minute to get caught up here once I get this path on the part. So Elijah, hold on here. Let's get back up to the top. Woo. Man, you guys are going quick in chat. All right. FeatureCAM was a really, really good product, and it still is a really good project, Elijah. So it's one of the products we recommend for anybody doing things with dual turret type mill turn work or requiring mill turn simulation. It's an outstanding product because of all the features that are still in it. It's also feature recognition. Forgot that Bogdan sent this in. Bogdan, you and your non-bald eagle units here. Let's go ahead and get that changed out. And let's get our tolerance turned up. There we go. If we can't get a little faster tool path out of this. So again, depending on where you're creating those profiles to start and finish, but like I said, this toolpath in particular doesn't have a inside out kind of setting. So this would lead me to believe that maybe something like steep and shallow would work really well for this specific use case. Again, in steep and shallow, if we say do a parallel pass, we are climb directioning. However, the inside out option as scallop would have disappearing, right? So this is something that, dependent on the toolpath and what you're going for, you might be best in a 3D contour situation. And with that 3D contour situation, it allows you to go ahead and create shallow areas and then work upwards or downwards, right? So again, as you're seeing here, we are working towards the center of the part. We could reverse our direction and say up milling versus down milling. So give me 1 sec here. We're going to order bottom up. And now again, you're seeing a bottom up workflow to be able to do. So again, I'm going to go ahead and run through this here real quick. So again, Elijah, I would say back in the day, the idea was feature-driven CAM, extremely powerful, right? So we kind of see that in Fusion right now when you start to do things like hole rec, because what it's looking at is the features of the holes themselves, right? Now, in the world of FeatureCAM, it's looking at all features on the part and extracting that data and creating those tasks automatically. All right. Yep. FeatureCAM does have machine sim for mill turn. It is a great asset. Get dual path lathe. So are you talking, Tim, like dual channel? As in you want to do multitasking, lower turret, upper turret, simultaneous type stuff, pinch turning, one on main, one on sub type things? Give you a second here to answer in chat. Yep. So, Tim, that's the big thing about FeatureCAM, right? It is built for that. I mean, I think it can handle four channels plus. So if you have 2 uppers, 2 lowers, a main, and a sub, it'll do it all in one. Now, there's a lot of confusion, though, because FeatureCAM comes with Part Maker. For anybody that's actually curious about FeatureCAM, you can actually drop your Fusion and machine extension because it's included in that package as well. Part Maker is one of the best softwares out for doing things on a Swiss machine. So that's kind of where the line starts to get drawn, is when you make that jump from like mill turn to Swiss, Part Maker is the way to go. But because you get all 3 products rolled into one, Fusion, FeatureCAM, and Part Maker, it's kind of a complete solution, right? So let me know, does that kind of start to point you in the right direction, Bogdan? Now, I know based on the profile that you showed me here, of course, you're getting some different dilemmas because you're so shallow down at the inside of the part. Now, again, is if I was to go back and just do a traditional scallop toolpath, we do have that ability to order inside out or outside in, and this is what I was looking for. The bad news is because the toolpath direction, we can't do both up and down milling as well as both directions. It's still going to come across that surface. So it's not necessarily going to run the full length of the part. Now, if you wanted it to really be forced where we have to manipulate the surface, I would jump back into Fusion, right? So Fusion's design workspace. So you do not have FeatureCAM with Fusion. There is a product called Fusion with FeatureCAM. That is the new product ID. So again, what I'm going to do here, as we've kind of been the theme of everything this week, if I was really concerned about going bottom up and I wanted to use parallel, I would still go in and create that offset surface. You guys can see I can now turn off that original part. And now in this case, I'm going to go ahead and split that surface in two. Now I'm going to utilize a mid plane here. So I could say, make me a plane between these two surfaces. And then from that, I could do a split body as well. So we could go ahead and say split body. And what we're going to split is that surface using the splitting tool. Now, some of you may be curious why I'm doing it this way. And well, the idea is I'm never harming my original part. This is the luxury of creating copies or duplicates and things like that, right? So again, I now have utilized those surfaces. So depending on how you're going to define and set things up, also big no-no here, guys. I should have turned on my timeline. This is 100% on me here. So I have that ability to now use the edges of those surfaces or use those specific surfaces for machining, right? So again, we have our parallel path here. If I actually wanted to say, you know what, model, again, I want to include it? Do I not want to include it, right? So I could say model specifically on this one half. Oh, go ahead and get those two faces selected. And then what I could say is leave this as a silhouette, I believe, still. And now you can see I'm machining bottom up. And then it's rinse and repeat, right? So again, if I take that toolpath and duplicate it, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing all over again, except I'm going to pick the two surfaces back the other way. And with that, you're going to see we're now going top to bottom, so I could change direction. So we have a pass direction here. We'll go ahead and pick that upper edge, which signifies where to start. So let's go ahead and change that out to the other side. Maybe the selection surface order is what's going after. So let's go ahead and change our selection order. We have both selected here. Go ahead and add those. And we're still going the wrong direction. No, you're 100% correct, Bogdan. As Bogdan's recommended, it's a whole nother solution as well. That would require us to extend it the other way. That would work even quite well with the scallop toolpath, of course. So what he's recommending, again, I'm going to butcher this file a little bit more here, is if we go back to surface, as you guys saw me use before, the extend tool. If I extend these couple of surfaces out further, again, I can do that at both ends. And then with that, that is the surface for manufacturing. Now, I'm just going to delete this one extra surface. But when we're manufacturing, again, we could, instead of using that parallel toolpath, he was talking about using scallop. And we'll just grab a brand new scallop toolpath. Again, if we say model, we could include the original or not include the original. And then based on that model of selection, if I use silhouette, it's automatically recognizing that that is the total profile I want, right? So again, I only did one half here, but as you guys can see, I'm driving this from, this is the part that always makes me laugh. I never actually used avoid machine surface here, right? I actually told the software I only want to machine those models. And with that, I want a silhouette of the models. Now, keep in mind, if I turned on include setup model here, it's going to basically machine everything, including our original part, as you can see here, right? So again, by turning that off and driving it based on the surfaces, it's actually a better workflow to go through and pick those model surfaces, whether or not you created an offset, right? So again, if I went in and I said, you know what, I want to machine only this surface here in the middle. Again, those offset surfaces are not on, but just like that, I could drive any toolpath from a surface without using avoid machine surface, if that makes sense. Just emailed some screenshots over. All right, guys, give me a sec here. I see a lot of you jumping up in chat. Guys, if you have questions at any times, feel free to go ahead and let me know. All right, did you send it to the ticket email? Because I am not seeing it anywhere. Emailed over some screenshots of the part. All right, we'll give that a minute here. So Bogdan, again, as you're seeing, you're 100% correct. Splitting that surface would work. You could have also created sketches. Again, this is the luxury. I don't know why we got on the subject this week. It's been hilarious to talk about, in my opinion. But like, again, instead of splitting surfaces, as you guys seen me do here, let's go ahead and throw everything away in this file and turn on our timeline like a good person would. So now that I have my timeline, if I was to create a sketch on the bottom here, again, we could go through and we could set, you know, a line midpoint to midpoint. Or if you're like me and you like rectangles, we could go ahead and create our rectangle. Again, this is going to be our machining boundary each direction so that we could define that toolpath inside out, right? So again, going into the manufacturer, we look at that parallel toolpath. And in this case, Bogdan, I'm going to go ahead and just create a brand new toolpath. So again, we could use parallel, if I could find it. Again, instead of silhouette, we could say selection. There's our boundary, and we could work with that, right? So again, one of you can figure it out. My brain is not working. We should be able to change direction. Say 180. I think that's how you do it. It is exactly how you do it. Can't be an expert 24/7. I just got to figure it out like you guys. Oh, you sent it the info email? All right, no problem. I'll go grab that real quick. So let's get over there. All right. Info, email. Okay. Run it by me. Okay, I see what you're doing. You're not nesting out parts. You are what I would consider almost tabbing parts. So you guys know, how can I open this up? So let me get this popped out here, if it'll let me. Actually, that'll work. Let me pull this over here fast. All right, so as you guys can see, what he's actually got is he's pinching on a sheet of metal here, and then he's running a duplicate of parts. That's what's going to be happening. So now, in my opinion, this is not nesting. All right, Bogdan. Bogdan Big Spender. Awesome. Great to see it in chat. That reminds me, should I get you guys real quick? You guys enjoy this? If we're answering your questions at any time, you guys can support this channel more and more. Likes, subscribes, sharing our content is always great. As you guys can see up above, you could also buy me beers and steak, or you could throw things inside a super chat. So let's get back here. So again, as you're seeing, we have the ability to do stuff like this. Now, again, this is, to me, is not nesting, right? This is just running a duplicate of parts all in one shot. So with that, if I go ahead and change gears here, again, machining each one individually with the intent that you're just multiple parts out of one material. Let me go ahead and get everything moved back around here. All right. So when doing stuff like that, if I remember correctly, the question is how to either contain those or how to machine each one individually. So what I'm going to do here real fast, I'm going to go ahead and do the smart thing and create a component. And then with that, let's go ahead and draw our profile. I'm just going to use a couple of real fast rectangles. And get that sketch back. Okay, so let's just say that's the part I'm trying to make, right? Now, I'm going to have the part, and then what I like to do is we're going to create a pattern of the component based on an axis, right? So again, let's say we're going to run 3 of these. Now, in my opinion, I could select each one as the model for manufacturing. You could set up your stock pretty normal. That's not going to be a problem at the end of the day because, again, remember we did the smart thing and used components. So let's go grab all those components. Component 1, 2, and 3. And then we could set our stock size pretty normal, right? You had to oversize it for some reason. Again, you have that full range of ability to set it to whatever you need. As long as you do the right thing, which is set your Z-axis up, of course, your X-axis in the right direction, and then go back and fix your mistakes as you're seeing yours truly have to do here. Give me a quick second here. Pull from the top. We're still not big enough. These are some pretty big parts. Who designed these things? And there we go. So now we have our parts. We have them in our material. So when it comes time to machine these, this is again where we talk about a couple of different options. Now, give me a real quick sec, guys, here. Had an email come in. Let me get back to my screen so I can see you guys in chat. So as you can see, oh, Jordan's in the chat. Watch out. The sales guys here, guys. Watch out. So as you can see, is what I'm going to do is my machining, if I wanted to use 3D toolpaths, by all means, guys, you could, right? So if I went in and I said something like horizontal all of these parts, now, again, machining boundary-wise, we could say none. We could leave it as a silhouette. It's going to come down to what you're using for toolpaths, right? Obviously not a ball end mill. Let's get that 1/2 inch flat because these are some bigger parts. And now what you're seeing is it is going through and it's horizontally toolpathing the top of each one of these, right? However, if I was making something like this and I was to throw 3D adaptive clearing at it, what you're going to notice is it's going to machine everything. Now, again, I've showed this to a lot of people is there's a lot of ways to do this, right? I'm going to reorder that we get a true toolpath in the proper stock. But let's say, for example, because of the way these parts are being held, I don't want to machine away all the material in between, right? So I have a couple of options. In getting into that mindset of boundaries, right? If I jump back to design and I sketch my boundary. Now, you can exaggerate this boundary because the idea is the boundary is bigger than the stock, but what Fusion only cares about is the area between that boundary and the stock, right? When I jump back to manufacture, I redo that actual toolpath. So again, I'm going to go ahead and say selected boundary. I would like the tool to stay inside boundary. And what you're going to notice here is that toolpath is going to only stay where that stock material is from our setup, right? So again, that's just one of them. Now, depending on your workflow and what you're doing, again, keep in mind, we don't have to, when doing the same part in a linear pattern, we don't actually have to go through and program each one. So if I wanted to repeat this down to the other two, what I could do is a new pattern. Again, this is the value of components, guys. So if I say component pattern, I pick the first one, and it will go through and find the targets automatically. So again, let's go ahead and go grab that first component. Targets here, we could go ahead and grab them manually if we wanted. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK, and then I'm going to drag my toolpath down in there. I will need to reorder this, of course. Let's get that drug back up and regenerate that toolpath. Give her a second to think. So again, as you guys are seeing now, based on component pattern, anything that I presumably do to one, again, I'm going to show you guys here. We're going to go ahead and grab that boundary again, is automatically being patterned to the other ones, right? So I don't need to program each individual part, especially if we're running them out of a stick like this. Now, there is an additional advantage to this when I jump over to design. I go ahead and bring that boundary in maybe. Maybe I want to do something with tabs, right? Now, there's multiple ways to do tabs. I'm a firm believer of modeling tabs, right? So this is where, again, we may say a new component. Now, it would be wise, if you're doing this, is to roll back your timeline. back when you were possibly designing your part, right? And make a set of tabs as its own component again. Again, this is going to be tabs. And I could go through and create whatever tab I want. Let's say I'm going to put one here and just put one here. Again, we can extrude those two out. I'm going to make them the same thickness as my part just to make my life easy. And as you can see, we now have the part, we have the tabs themselves, we have our total assembly. And if I roll my timeline back forward down here, I can go back to that original component pattern, add my tabs to the pattern, and just like that, you've now duplicated out everything going on here. So we've kind of been in this whole idea of boundaries all day today, as well as adding model and back and forth, right? So again, I go back to design. Here's my original tool paths. Keep in mind, those tabs are not a part of my original model to be manufactured, right? My final goal is to make those parts, part 1, 2, and 3, right? As you can see by activating that, because I have my synchronizations on down here, is we've automatically turned off the tabs. Well, for roughing, I would like to add the tabs in, and I will add the tabs in via model, right? So if I go to my tabs now, again, we are now recognizing that there is material at the end of my part to which we are auto avoiding, right? So big thing here, as you guys can see, utilizing the tabs as well as a boundary to successfully get my tool paths where I want them, right? On my horizontal toolpath, I may not care about those tabs. I don't need to machine the top of the tab. But again, if we go in and we say something like 3D contour now, so I'm just going to derive this operation. This is a way to cheat, just so you guys know. Tool outside of boundary. There we go. And now we have our 3D contour. But notice, I would be cutting my tab. So again, I'll jump back. We'll go ahead and add our tabs in using model. And again, as you're noticing, is now we're avoiding that tab. But we're going all the way around the tab, right? So this is where you get to pick your poison, guys, is going back to my design side once again. We could, of course, bring that boundary in, bring this boundary in, and then going back to manufacture, we could regenerate everything we have. So again, those tabs extend outside my stock, the same as my boundary. My boundary is no longer outside. Again, as you can see, we're machining all the way down, around, and back up. So Bogdan, let's go ahead and see what you got. You sent the file one more time. Bogdan, what are you, so you're trying to split that surface still? Go ahead and get that pulled up on my other screen here. Oh, let's get back in there. And pull that in one more time. Close out those 2 tickets real quick. Bogdan, give me a sec while I have this up. And let's get that uploaded. In the meantime, if any of you guys have any questions at any time, feel free to throw them in chat. Feel free to use the info email down below if you are embarrassed and don't want people to see your parts. We are here for you guys. I think we also have Jordan out there in chat right now as well. So let's get that secondary part pulled up from Bogdan. So it looks like, okay, so you got half of it here, but the problem is, this is a good example of why we tell people the blue lines tell all, right? Get the blue lines on the part. So in Bogdan's case, if I turn off his model, currently waterfalling over the top edge of that part, right? So when we have these problems and we explain it to people, or not the sales pitch you guys again, when we're on site in Houston, Texas next month doing our 3-day training, you guys are getting a little sample of this. We show you guys how to fix the stuff as well as we're going. Ken, what's going on? What's Hypermill good for? I mean, Hypermill's not a bad CAM software. He's in here yelling. But as you guys can see, we have an upcoming free training down in Houston, Texas. I've heard right now the record, we have a guy flying in from Tennessee for the 3-day training. But The good news is we've got the blue lines on the part, but when we look at trying to constrain this down, we're water falling outside of our boundary. Well, that's an XY containment. By XY, I mean, based on our work offset, we're looking in XY. So that would lead me to believe the geometry tab is where the problem is. Now, if you notice, his boundary here is so much bigger than what he's trying to machine, but yet because he told it the model without the original, he's getting limited, right? So again, he picked the two faces, get the model turned back on and flipped over for you guys. As you can see there, so he picked two faces. I'm assuming he did like I did, right? So again, he has a body here. Nope, he just picked the surfaces on the part. Or am I missing the bodies here somewhere? Let's see here. Give it a quick sec. Where did you... Oh, I see what you did. Okay, so you pulled like this surface, and right? So the problem that he's having is that containment boundary runs all the way out here. And because he's saying only these two surfaces without the top surface, that is what's causing the waterfall effect. So to show you guys this is if I add a third surface, this one here, leaving the top empty, what you're going to notice is we're now double waterfalling on this part, right? So as you can see, if we reset the process here, is I need to redefine how I'm setting my boundary, right? Notice how this boundary extends way past everything going on. Go back to design here real quick. If I pull this guy in, and now you can see that rectangle is only that specific area, right? So I think there is some taper on. But this would be one of the few times I would tell you guys, a rectangle might not be the best of choices. Let's go ahead and delete this one edge. We're going to pull that out a little further. And I'm going to drop a line end to end here because of the taper. All I've done is created a new boundary to work with, right? Back to manufacture, back to editing my toolpath. Go ahead and say yes. I'm going to go ahead and pick that new chain. Again, I'm going to remove the two, right? So let's go ahead and grab those two surfaces again. For some reason, we're grabbing everything. Try that one more time. Grab the first one, and then we'll come back for the second one. Sometimes it's a little easier to define. There we go. We don't want a face contour. We want that as part of the model for me. But it doesn't want to give it to us because sketch getting in my way. That, boom. There we go. We got our two faces. We got our boundary set. Again, now we got that toolpath on one half. So this is where we go back and we say, okay, I want to switch it to 180 degrees from where it is to go bottom up. So again, Bogdan, I hope that helps you out. The problem was that big green boundary area that you had was getting in the way. So Ken, I personally haven't used Hypermill. I've heard, mixed reviews about it, like all softwares, right? I mean, it doesn't matter what software you use, people get a little upset. Again, from my experience, a lot of the guys that have Hypermill, they love it. I don't encounter a lot of people switching from Hypermill. Now, it's not anything to say that it's the best CAM software. I don't think any of them are the best software. I think all of you guys probably make your decisions on software as we've talked about before. I need mill turn simulation and I got a dual turret lathe. We would point you at FeatureCAM. In that case, it's still an Autodesk product, so I could say Autodesk makes some pretty good CAM software. But it's a use case, right? Again, I used to use Mastercam's porting. I love the porting tool in Mastercam, but that was about the limit of what I would want to use Mastercam for. Great for some things, not Swiss. There you go. The more you know, right? 100%, Travis, you do. You got to justify the cost. Do you need a $25,000 seat of software to run Haas TL2? Definitely not. Yeah, Bogdan's out there nudging Fusion as the best. It is. I mean, again, to me, guys, I came from Mastercam. I still like Mastercam. Mastercam is great. Yes, 100%, Todd. PowerMill does have porting, and I will tell you guys this. The only reason why I haven't messed with PowerMill porting is because it's going to take me the time to learn it, right? I know I can go in Mastercam. I know the way it works. It's kind of like being on site the last couple of weeks. I get into a rental car and the blinker's in the wrong spot. Both cars have blinkers, my car, this car, the next car, but they move some stuff around. A lot of it still works the same. I will say, in the world of Power Mill's tool paths are written by Delcam. Now, Fusion's 5-axis and Mastercam does come a lot more from module work, right? And now on the Hypermill side, I have no idea where those tool paths come from. But Bogdan's asking about Work NC. I've seen those questions come up a lot from a lot of the AI stuff. I'm a big fan of it. I think it's a really, really, really good thing for the future of the trade. But I also think when we look at things like, perfect example right now, Fusion software is very, very aimed at a lot of the simpler side of stuff. When you get into niche things, porting is a really good example, or dual turret lathe, right? That is all stuff that there is a software with a niche approach that works really, really well in those use cases. Again, I have a lot of customers that are using Work NC and what's the other one? I can't think of it off the top of my head, but basically AI programming for the simple stuff in your shop, right? Travis would know all about that. He's maintaining 2 SV2s. He was doing that on top of running a 5-axis. He'd probably look at, having that AI ability to just auto create programs or create 90% of the program for the machine. Yeah, and I appreciate you coming in here, but I don't think anybody's going to know the cost of Hypermill. But I would highly recommend that you go ahead and send us an email at info and we see why you're so curious about Hypermill, because we would be happy to convince you different Autodesk product, probably more affordable off the start anyways. Yeah, so again, you're 100% correct, Tim. Al did go to one of them. I don't know what it is off of the top of my head. I can pull it up on my other screen. He went with Toolpath, didn't he? Yeah, so he's with Toolpath Labs. Very similar. I mean, they both have their different approach. From my understanding, one of them was aiming more towards, again, guys, don't hassle me about this in chat. It's been a while since I've deeply looked at either one. One was looking at, yeah, they do have Cam Assist. I think Toolpath is Cam Assist, isn't it? I don't know. You guys got me pulling them up on the other screen now. Yeah, Cloud NC is Cam Assist, right? And then Toolpath is, what is it? Oh man, I'm pulling it up here. Give me a sec. So yeah, so you have Toolpath, and then you have Cloud NC, and again, there's a lot of things people always ask me. Hear me out. Hear me out. Again, I see opinions. You guys are entitled to your opinion. When I looked at it about a year ago in depth, one was aimed at more of a pre-sales approach. One was more aimed at a post-sales approach. That has changed dramatically over the last little bit, right? Again, not picking sides. All I'm hoping is that you guys never buy into them and stay here buying me beers and wondering how to do stuff. I think, like I said, I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing. I've seen a lot of shops, a lot of places that have been like R&D labs really benefit well from this. Again, it's almost turned it into 3D printing, right? I 3D printed stuff today, and there's a reason I spent the money on the Bamboo Labs, because every time I put it on there, it prints perfect. It would be cool though if one of them would make an integration to, Power Mill and FeatureCAM and Part Maker. Awesome. Do you guys have any other questions? Any other curiosities? I see people jumping in, jumping out. Looks like a little bit of a slow day. I know we got dumped on with about 3 inches of snow last night. It's the beginning of the month, right? Everybody's taking vacation. Well, go ahead and get back over to that other. HD2. I've been hearing a lot about it. Travis, I could agree with you, right? It's fun to just program parts. I always loved the challenge when I was on a shop floor. Cool. You guys have any other questions? Like I said, feel free to throw stuff in chat. As you guys know, I've already showed you once here. We have our lovely free training going on down in Houston. Again, that's going to be 3 days. You can sign up for 1 day. You can sign up for all days. You guys want more info about this? It is on our website. Any good methods on Fusion libraries? I mean, that is a good conversation to have because I have been fighting Akuma and Mazax lately. I always tell people right now, and here's something that I'm not giving you guys anything, but the way we build out tool libraries is probably going to change, right? So, in my opinion, I have a tendency to have a shop crib that basically would have everything. And then, as you can see, I've made a folder specifically shop crib. But from that, I tend to keep a couple of machines with tools on it. Now, something kind of wild. I want to show this to you. I've been curious about this. It's going to be a good one. So let's go ahead and do I have a simple machine I can throw something on? I have a lot of broken machines because you guys have me doing stuff during the week. So if this part was on a machine, I've been curious about this. And if we look at our tool library, oh, it's not there. I thought it would be. Maybe I'm thinking a different way. There's been times where that actual tool or machine shows up in my library. You guys seen that before? I've seen it. It's been crazy where you go in and you're like, oh yeah, we're going to look at this part. And then all of a sudden you have a machine library or you have the machine in your library. Maybe I'm going crazy. Let me go look somewhere else. Definitely wouldn't be here. I'm going crazy. That's all there is to it. I've had it. It was almost like you had the machine's library itself show up. Oh, let's look at this a little different way. Hold on. Hey, we're going to go select the tool. Nope, still didn't show up. I'm being a liar. Yep, I don't see it here. I feel like I've seen it before, though. You guys agree with me? Oh, broken machine. Ahas. I hear a lot of people talk shit about machines. I can tell you this. Machine that makes parts that are good, that makes paychecks is a good machine. So I do remember you mentioning something about a tool sticking out of your folder. Now, again, this is the great thing is a lot of things have changed in the world of Fusion over the years. Like if you're importing tools, which might be a good one to point out, it's imported and I can't fix it. So based on the information, your tool has a gauge length. And now for some of you, that gauge length is from where that tool sits in the circle all the way down to the tip of the tool, right? So this is actually something you could measure with a pre, if that makes sense. But that length that you have is if that was to change, for example, to 30 in this case, notice how it moves that black line down. If you have a tool that's hanging out of your machine and your tool holder has a Cat 40 or whatever taper, I don't know if any of the default ones do. I think they've cleaned them all up. You see if I can find, yeah, I'm not going to be able to find one that has. But if you have the Cat 40 or 50 or whatever holder you're using, your gauge length will change based on that information. And when you go to machine sim, and it's really weird because your tool is hanging out and it looks like it's holding on to the pull stud at the tip of the spindle. But Travis, that's where I would point you to look at it. Now, if your machine as a whole, in this case, is also broken, which I see pretty commonly, Let me go ahead and get into the machine library. This is not the machine library for the. So if I was to go into my machine library in this case, and I was to edit in Machine Builder, I would need to verify and make sure that when I set up my machine, that my tool, as you can see where that is selected, is in the actual machine, right? As you can see, that is where the tool is supposed to sit, and that is where that gauge line is at the machine and where your gauge length comes from. Again, it is if you were to view your machine, you'll see here in a sec, I could actually say, let's say there was a 1/2-inch tool that is 5 inches long. Notice how the tool is in the spindle, right? Pretty big deal. But that would be the two places I would look if your tool is not setting right. Travis, if you want to send me the tool, feel free and I'll take a look. I do know, trying to remember where I put the link. Give me a sec here. I think I'm going to do a video. Yes, I do. We'll have the link. So for those of you that don't know, this one I saw the other day. Get my OBS pulled back up. There is a way to import 3D models into the tool library if you didn't know. You would have to install the Fusion Essentials add-on from GitHub, and then that allows you to pull in tools themselves in those tool holders, right? So you can now bring in a 3D model of a tool utilizing this information right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy that and throw it in chat for you guys. Maybe not. How can I? A lot of information to be. I will do what I always do, which is get you guys a chance to get a screenshot out of that. Maybe I should make a video about this next week. What do you guys think? Workflow Wednesday? How to import 3 libraries? Go ahead and let me know if that's something you guys would like to see. In the meantime, any other questions? Anything else anybody's having some problems with this week? Jeff says yes. All right. I will for sure add that to the list then. We'll see about making Workflow Wednesday that. So again, what you're looking for, it is on the Autodesk forums. It's just how to add a new tool holder using import 3D model. Well, I guess it's set in stone too. Somebody motioned it. Somebody seconded it. Where's my gavel? When do you guys need a CNC machine to be a gavel so I could just, boom. Next Wednesday, coming to a YouTube channel near you. How to import 3D models for tool holders. Cool. Any questions outside of that? Leaving it up to you guys. You could always shut this down early. It seems that my internet problems have been remedied temporarily until the internet company gets out. I had to move. My dedication to you guys, I had to move my whole desk next to my router to plug it in. So you're using Morph. So Bogdan is now using Morph instead on of his part. So let's take a look. 3D Morph. Now in Morph, there is no inside to outside setting, right? So again, the problem with Morph is going to be is based on the direction itself, right? So again, those of you that don't know, you could say Morph, and then I want to stay between edge and edge. And from that, let's go ahead and get a toolpath on here. Our step over right now. We have a number of step overs. Better. Be able to do. Yeah, we're going to use step over, maximum step over. So as you can see, we're running down and back across the part, very similar to how we did parallel. And with that, let's see. One, you have what's called closest, right? And what closest is going to do is it's basically going to try to maintain the profile that you're trying to machine, right? So again, we don't have any real ability set inside, outside, outside, inside as we would with scallop, right? So again, one nice thing is though, as I'm seeing here, is you do have what's called pass extension. If you guys didn't know, let's say I wanted to go 10 millimeters past. As you can see, we can extend in a direction that actual setting. Actually, maybe I put it in the wrong. Take a look. You did say pass extension 10 millimeters. However, I am not seeing pass extension come through, which would lead me to believe that is controlled, of course, by a silhouette of our part. And then that would also lead me to believe that we can't extend off of our part because of that. I see some more questions jumping around in chat. Oh, that's right. We were supposed to cover wire EDM, weren't we, Jordan? I totally forgot about that. All right. So again, Bogdan, it looks like morph isn't going to work the best because again, you're trying to set it from the middle out and there's only a few tool paths. This would be my recommendation, Bogdan, is go ahead and check the tool paths, right? And when you're looking at those tool paths, you could go ahead and define whether or not they're going to work inside out or outside in that passes tab, right? So again, that kind of wraps that up. So, all right. So EDM, let's talk a little bit about EDM. I like to think about that. This will actually work pretty good. So in the world of Fusion and EDM, I know a lot of people out there that have EDM and they've been doing stuff inside of Fusion. Now, what we do is we kind of trick the system. And I'm going to show you guys a couple of ways to do so. So if you are somebody looking to cut a part out on an EDM, if I jump back to manufacture real quick, actually, we're going to go to design. The first thing I would recommend to most people is the ability to actually go in and create a sketch of what you want to actually EDM and then exporting a DXF, right? So what I'm going to do here is we're going to go ahead and get our tabs out of the way. But if, let's say I wanted to cut this bottom profile here, if I create a sketch on that face, what you're going to see is I now have that sketch over here on the left, and I can right click and export as DXF, right? So just know your sketches that you've defined or your geometries you've defined, we could send this out as a DXF, and somebody with the DXF has that ability, or not DXF, somebody with an EDM software could open that DXF up, and then a traditional workflow of EDM. Now, if we change that up, though, is inside of Fusion, it's kind of a hack, but it works, is instead of doing milling, we actually say we're doing cutting. We are going to lie to the software here because what we could really do is we could define our path for cutting using a 2D profile from the fabrication tab and then defining something like a laser, plasma, or water jet. So again, as you can see, we have laser cutters, we have plasmas, and we have water jets. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab a laser cutter. Now, keep in mind, you do have a lot of things here like kerf width that you could set, or are you going to compensate that with your wire size at the machine? So again, is if we go ahead and do a silhouette chain, grab my part here. And with that, that is now the profile around the outside of my part. Again, speeds and feeds, it's all dependent on your machine, especially when we talk about EDM, right? Your kerf width, your wire size, your amps, your voltage, everything possible, right? But what I am doing is I'm creating that profile inside of Fusion to run around the outside, and then I could post this out using a lot of the post processors. So now I will say this will more than likely take a custom post, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab, let's see here. I grabbed a laser, didn't I? There's not going to be a, well, we're in the wrong library here. Let's get to the Fusion library. Now, something that would possibly work is using something like a plasma post. Again, there is a laser post, water jet post inside of Fusion. Most actual EDM machines, all they're looking for is kind of XY codes to create that toolpath profile, right? So now, again, some of these also have the ability, as you're seeing, from a laser to an EDM, you may need to put material codes in. But really, most EDMs, like I said, just want generic G code. It may be some simple M code changes to turn on, turn off the EDM, start, stop, things like that. Maybe a little different title block. As you guys have seen, I've made a million videos on all of this, but meat and potatoes, it's usually just X, Y points in space, right? So as you guys see here, this post processor doesn't actually use a Z axis. It uses M103, M104 to to lower that laser and raise that laser. Uh, but that is something that you can do. So again, is in a 2-axis environment, Fusion does have that ability to generate some EDM code, right? Now, I've heard some people with a 4-axis or a machine that can cut taper, it gets a lot more ugly. And that's again where we really recommend looking at feature, right? FeatureCAM has an EDM side to it. Again, it's a niche use case. It supports paper cutting on an EDM as well. So, Jordan, I hope that answers any questions anybody has out there. So, Jeff's been watching our FeatureCAM stuff. What is better choice or bang for your buck, machining extension or FeatureCAM? Jeff, that you can't really classify it in those two categories. I hate to say it, but like majority of shops that we are dealing with nowadays, they're running things more aimed at like single turret, dual spindle lathes, 5-axis milling. Fusion does really, really good with that stuff, right? Now, again, we start to talk about things like, what about EDMs? What about dual turret mill turns? What about machine simulation and mill turns? That's where we start to point people at FeatureCAM, right? So again, so you guys know, we sell and support all the Autodesk products. We also have people on staff that can train and support you in FeatureCAM, part maker, power mill, even CAMplete at the end of the day if you want a second insurance policy. So again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. So Ken's question here. Undercut deburring tool. Get into a hole. Is it possible to use a chamfer toolpath or would you need to use contour? Well, Ken, honestly, what I would recommend if you're trying to deburr like an intersect hole or a cross hole and undercutting, what you really need to be using is actually the deburr toolpath with a lollipop. That's going to work out really, really well for you. Any other questions outside of that, guys? Feel free to throw them in chat at any time. I see Travis's message about undercutting deburrs. Again, if you guys want to see an example of that, we could draw something here. So go ahead and put a here would be a good example of an intersecting hole that needs deburring underneath or undercutting. If I go into manufacture, a 3D deburr, again, I need to define a tool. Go ahead and grab a lollipop cutter here in library. With that lollipop cutter, we're going to go ahead and tell the software that I want to go only where I'm selecting. As you can see, the deburr toolpath has automatically now picked up on the fact that it needs to go in deep enough, the heights, the angles, and everything automatically. This is why, Ken, we highly recommend the deburr toolpath. We could, of course, obviously give you a personalized demo on that if you don't have the machining extension. And we could evaluate your needs for it if it's just this toolpath. In my opinion, this toolpath alone sells it because at the same time, I could have obviously now done both the end pieces too, all from a 3-axis environment if my tool has the stick out in the reach, right? As you could see, just in a 3-axis machine, I could be deburring quite a bit more than what most people would expect. If we were working on a 4-axis or a 5-axis machine, of course, it's even better, right? Because then we would have multi-axis tilting to be able to really improve and change how that workflow is going to be. Cool. Any other questions outside of that? Somehow we've made it a whopping hour and a half without any internet problems. So Things are going good here. Guys, if you ever have questions outside of this, by all means, shoot us an email with the emails down below. We'd be happy to help. Show how to program a coil round cut around a shank like a thread, but okay. So 4th axis mill, no machining extension, a round coil. So what you're trying to do is just cut like a half moon profile, or fluting a barrel, as I would call it. I'll go ahead and give you a second here. You guys will have to let me know, because you could hypothetically do it in the event that you have the wrap toolpath in 2D contour, right? So if I go ahead and create a new part here real quick, say it's a cylinder, and then if I create a area to machine, and I'm going to create my sketch, and let's just do a 3-point rectangle. You can emboss this. Oh, and we want to cut that. So if I needed to machine something wrapping around a cylinder at the end of the day, regardless of how much it wraps or how little, if it's single point, or you're actually machining something that points to center. Now, I make this very known because in the world of manufacturing, you do have the ability to do a wrapped toolpath, right? So again, as we're going to go ahead and define our Z up, actually, let's go back. Z is this axis, X is this way, and let's rotate around center, right? Now, if I go into 2D and I do 2D pocket, what you're going to see is in the multi-axis tab, I actually have what's called wrap. I need to wrap something around a cylinder, and then I need to define my pocket. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and pick that chain. And then from that, we're going to go ahead and give this a tool, right? So again, we're going to go back through my library. If I don't have something in here that's like more of a smaller cutter, there we go. And of course, that's not going to fit because that pocket is not big enough. So give me a quick second to get that changed up here. Pocket a little bit wider. And go back into manufacturing. Now, keep in mind, with wrap toolpath, it always points the tool to center at the end of the day. So a lot of people miss that whole concept that if the tool is always pointed at center, and these walls aren't actually running down to the center point, right? So they're not like, here's your center of rotation, and they always point out from center, which would mean your pocket is tapered, right? These are square cut. So instead of perpendicular to center, they actually run parallel to center. You would actually go in and do this with like advanced swerf. And again, advanced swerf has the ability to be 4th axis only, but you would need to have the machining extension, right? So again, something a little different on a workflow here is the ability to use advanced swerf to actually control that tool utilizing the walls and, in this case, the floor with a full 4-axis live toolpath, right? So again, as you see, we start to get in these corners, it gets a little finicky where we would need to change some settings, but that would cut those actually as a square pocket, not a tapered kind of wall. So I hope that helps you out with the round coil setup. As you can see, again, is if you have the wrap toolpath, I feel like at one point they were talking about moving it out of contour and putting it in the extension. But when you're dealing with live 4-axis, I would highly recommend the extension. Again, everything from rotary contour to rotary pocket for roughing stuff out. Much better approach than the wrap tool. So, post question. Is there a way to do a different comparison between two posts? If I modify a post and I see a new post update, I want to update my post, but I don't want to lose the other changes. Well, so the problem is going to be, Deep Thinker, is in Visual Studio Code. If I pull it up here, you do have the ability to compare things, right? So I think a lot of people miss this. If I go to my downloads folder and I pick 2 post processors, right? So here's 2 posts. I'm using Control to pick both of them, and I right-click Compare Selected. The problem is going to be based on what is where. Now, this does make it a little easier for you to color code and jump quickly to all the changes over here on the right. And as you can see, that is telling you this is different, that is different, anything that has been changed from one side to the other side, right? So again, being able to open up where those posts are, right click, compare and compare, and then with that, you'll have both of those to be able to work on them in real time. I would also recommend, if this is something you plan to do, make sure, of course, you're also using the plugin. You're going to need that Autodesk plugin, but when you go to actually create any code or anything of that nature, using the export for a custom NC program based off your toolpath also allows you to edit, make life a dream, right? So again, is this case, this debugger is pulled up. This is a turning toolpath that I was created earlier when I was doing some machining, but this will auto-generate G code based on the toolpath in Fusion, right? It's not your normal debugger code. I've talked about this a lot, because if I would go back now and say, okay, just create me a generic facing tool, right? As you can see it, that creates a generic toolpath. It's not what I'm actually currently working on inside of the software. Again, as if I was to post this, again, that is the export CNC file. You're going to see that will create a export of exactly what we just did there. And now if I go back up to custom, that is that actual physical toolpath, that 2D Pocket 1 that we just created, all the G code associated. Compare is huge. I think compare everywhere inside the software. Anytime I can compare things, or when you guys put in tickets and you say the toolpath is all messed up, I go in and I simply pick 2 toolpaths and I say compare and edit, right? I create it from scratch, hitting OK, and then I compare what is different between. Awesome. Any other questions outside of that, guys? To make sure I didn't miss anything, I'm going to scroll up here a little bit. I appreciate each and every one of you for making it out, making this more and more fun. Again, I did talk about wire EDM already. I think it was about 10, 15 minutes ago. We have 2 different Kens in here? We do. Both with the last name starting with C. That's a good one. Here we go. So, Ken, if you no, it's all right. Understood. That's why we record these, put them online so you guys can see them at any time. About 10 minutes ago, we were talking about, it might be a little further. No? That part go. Would have been talking about none of these parts. To clean up around this place. That's where we were talking about thread. I was talking about it on here, Ken. So if you see these parts, we did talk about it a little bit before, but we basically set up Fusion with a laser, plasma cutter, or water jet. And then upon posting that, this is where you may need us to help you with editing the post. We went ahead and threw this onto a laser post. Again, depending on that machine. And if you are who I think you are, you have a FANUC control on that thing, and we pretty much can run it with generic G. Awesome. Any other questions, guys? Going once, going twice? Give this a couple more minutes. I'm going to go ahead and check the ticket system. Make sure nobody threw tickets. That is not the ticket system. Here. All right. Asked if it was possible to mill a hex in the middle of a shaft. Someone pointed out that FeatureCAM, it is possible to do that with cutoff. You want to mill a hex in of a shaft on a 2-axis lathe. So what you're referring to is like eccentric turning, right? Is that what you're asking about, Bogdan? Give me a sec here. I'm pulling up not eccentric. Oh, it is eccentric, isn't it? A really good video. Kind of, guys, back here. So like this, right, Bogdan? As you saw them there, they were milling up, or they were turning off center, right? So again, is the idea is utilizing just the x-axis, or in this case, this machine has x and y. But as they get down that shaft, you notice how there's like a lobe that's happening, right? So if you were to try to do something like that with a hex, Fusion can't do it by default. I'm pretty sure FeatureCAM can. Awesome. Any other questions? Oh, Tim, it's been forever since I went back and visited that. No, it's not a solar light collector. Turn a profile in a threat. No, I'll pull it up. I'll reveal. I'll give you guys the big reveal on our website if you guys haven't seen. It actually leads me to believe, you guys know that Fusion's on sale right now, as well as our training. Hold on, I'm trying to get things moved around so I can get. And I need to know threat by what do you mean by threat? But as you guys can see, one, we have a big time sale going on right now. So all of our online training as well as our support packages are on sale. But the guess the part scenario one, I was messing around with this over one of the weekends and I embedded a viewer on my website, and I was curious if anybody was going to actually investigate this. So Tim, you might actually get a pretty good laugh out of this, because if you were to click this little cube right here, it's actually a chicken feeder that I designed up using a 5-gallon bucket and 3D printing. So the answer is there, but this is something neat. If you guys didn't know, you could go out and you can actually view stuff via the online viewer, and then you can move it around and look at it in different ways, of course, seeing the whole assembly. But yeah, that's a 5-gallon bucket and just a hole saw on the side to give them an area to reach their head in and eat. And then I coned it at the bottom that the food always falls underneath. So I used to have goats. Goats are, to say the least, a bunch of assholes. And they used to get into the chicken feed, and this is how I remedied the situation. Ah, so Ken, if you're trying to do something based on that on a lathe, are you doing it on a lathe or on a mill, Ken? I'll give you a sec here to respond. Tons of you in chat today on a lathe. Yeah. So if you were trying to turn a profile on the lathe, let me get back to the one of 8 million parts that I have here. Is the problem is going to be is this is, again, you're starting to get into that world of what Fusion can't really do out of the box the best. But if we were doing turning, and I'm going to have to create a new setup here real quick, and I was to do a threading toolpath, right? The problem will be is when I go in to define my tool, I can't really define the threading tool as a proving tool. At least I can't remember if I can. We could try it here real quick. Actually, you can. Look at that. Can't always be right about everything. But if you set your pitch, whatever that pitch is, right? Let's just say, for example, it's 0.05 is 20 per. But there's the actual part that I want. And then my tool path, again, I'm using a like disc cutter or a ceramic cutter. Whatever we define that to, that would chase that profile. Again, as long as you know whatever that actual feed rate is or that pitch to be able to program it. So it looks like you could. Any other questions outside of that? But I'm going to up the ante here and we can run sim on this. I'm going to say that was 0.02. That was a typo on yours truly. Let's say 0.5 pitch. And if I simulate this, and we're going to see it slam into the part, but that would be like a helix, the length of the part, right? So keep in mind, one, I actually need to adjust quite a bit more. As you can guess, look at our radii, stock OD. It's looking at the model face for everything. That's why that first pass looked a little funky. So if I was to change my stock real quick down, same size, and then simulate. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my part off. I might actually have to turn, oh, no, there we go. It's going. I might have to turn my accuracy up so we, there we go. Ken, I hope that helps you out there. As you can see, it's completely possible with a OD grooving tool. Well, any other questions, guys? Open up to you. Problems, issues, complaints, things that you noticed throughout the week. I guess I have a few more for you guys before I jump, of course. Actually, I'm going to do some new Workflow Wednesday videos. I do. I have quite a few lined up, one of which is using okay, no problem, Ken. I'll go ahead when you send in an email, we can get on to a meeting. I think I'm gonna finally rip the Band-Aid off, and we're gonna talk about setting up possibly jigs and fixtures and everything with stock. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna do container. I need to do the container method, and we're gonna do the import step. Maybe we do a double Workflow Wednesday next week. What do you guys think? We double down? Do the container method on top of doing the import step model for your tool. Cool. If you guys don't have any more questions, I'm gonna, of course, tell you guys, of course, you have the ability to support this channel in a lot of ways. One, as you guys saw before, Bogdan, big baller out there, dropped a ton of money in Super Chat. However, you could also buy us beers, and we have an option to buy me a steak if you've learned something new today, or we possibly answered your questions. You could also buy Fusion to us right now, which is currently 30% off for the month of April. We are matching that 30% off with our support packages, as well as our hourly online training. Now, you could also come visit yours truly when I'm down in Houston doing a three-day Fusion basic training. Now, this is a very beginner course. I know a lot of people have asked me about it. Now, as an intermediate user or advanced user, you could probably still learn things in this class that would absolutely shock you. So again, if you guys want to meet me, we will be down in Houston at the HFO, and in the next coming months, I will possibly be at several other machine dealers throughout the United States. So, any other questions? I'm not seeing nothing in chat. You guys know it's not what you know, it's who you know. You know Fusion Phil over here at jitcadcam. We're here to help you in any way we can. Feel free to use the email down below to send in your information or your questions. We will get those as timely as we can. With that, you guys have a great rest of your weekend. Bogdan, thanks again for kicking off my weekend in a great way. See you guys.